said this in my last talk, but a quantum physicist said that the chance, the statistical probability of us being here as these human beings existing on this planet is about the same as a tornado whipping through a junkyard and miraculously forming a 747. So there's some intelligence that drives organization and takes no thing into something. That's cool. That's chi. So the flow of that energy is health. Does that make sense? So I'm not talking esoteric, woo-woo concepts. Actually, I'm speaking about very real phenomenon that we can actually measure, and we can then break it down into smaller parts so that we can understand that how you do you, how you think about your life, how you feel, all the experiences you have are then encoded in your system and then begin to drive how you see the world. So each acupuncture meridian has specific emotions that are associated with it, which are vibrational frequencies. Every channel in your body, different ones, are affected by different emotions. And what is an emotion but it's energy in motion? That's it. We perceive it with mind and label it as something, but it's really just bursts of energy. And, as I'll describe later, it's bursts of certain kinds of peptides and molecules that then dock in all the organs of your body. So it makes sense then when this system's working well, you're working well. Does that make sense? Okay. When you resist your emotional experience, you block that energy. When you resist frustration, sadness, fear, dread, anger, rage, hatred, doldrums of dark depression, you actually block certain emotions, and then you block that energy, and then you can block that meridian. And then every meridian is associated with different muscles, different organs, different neurotransmitters. Uplifting emotions enhance our energy flow and allow this chi to flow. Congested energy in our communication channels causes disease, breakdown, faster aging, and tension. Very simple. Emotions can provide messages from our innate intelligence, and that if we heed them, it becomes an EGS, an emotional guidance system. Your highest wisdom is always talking to you all of the time. For years, people have said, I want to be intuitive like you, Matt. How people think I'm special because I have intuitive gifts. I'm not. I am the same as you. The difference is I have self-esteem and I listen. And when I'm tired and I'm grumpy and I don't want to talk to people, I'm not very intuitive, just so you know. But you are just as intuitive as I am. The difference is most people don't always want to listen to what their intuition is telling them. You don't always want to hear what's coming through because it might ask you to be things that scare you, do things that threaten you, say things that challenge you, challenge your sense of self, your identity. But what's a sense of self? What's a sense of identity? Who made that up? It's like economies and capitalism and socialism. It's all made up. It's all thought bubbles projected out onto a screen that everybody buys into and believes enough until we make it real. But what if you start to question the whole system? I'm getting a little bit off track. But I'm not. And so, emotions provide messages from our deepest intelligence. I call it innate intelligence, or the still small voice within. And these especially come from our gut. And everybody's intuitive. Everybody's intuitive. And I just say this to give you context. You know, people will say, oh, that's so amazing. You can walk up to someone and put your hands on them and, know what they're thinking or feeling. Sometimes that's true, yes. And all it is that my energy field is interacting with their energy field, and all of a sudden, I just can see the same pictures in myself that they're feeling inside of themselves. It's so simple. It's not complicated. And you guys do it all the time. Your mind is in every body of your cell. Does anybody know who Candace Pert is? Candace Pert? She's amazing. She was amazing. She was a woman at the National Institutes of Health. She was a PhD researcher who was studying opioid receptors. Does anybody know what opioids do in the body? They're substances that we create in our inner pharmacy that block pain, instigate healing, and produce a sense of like relaxed well-being. And Candace Pert came along, super courageous, and because she was a woman in an exceptionally male-dominated world, she was a bit battered. But as she was doing her work, of course this would come from a woman, she discovered that there were these curious molecules that seemed to be generated from all these different organs and that seemed to go to every other organ, and that as she studied them more, she realized that they would change based on the emotional states of a person, and that every emotion we had a certain molecular structure to it, and that it wasn't produced in our brain, although our brains do produce them. Our heart produces them, our spleen produces them, our small intestines produce them, our gonads produce them. They're produced everywhere in our body. Did you like my pause after gonads? So she went on further to say that the chemicals that are running our body and our brain are the same chemicals that are involved in emotion. And that says to me that we better pay more attention to emotions with respect to health. So here's a preeminent scientist saying the very same thing that Chinese sages had said for 3,000 years, the same thing that Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung and Carl Rogerian was his first name, Carl? No, Will Rogers was the actor, Carl Rogers was the psychologist. The same thing that all these different people said, the same thing that the Vedic sages had said, más o menos. They didn't speak Spanish. They spoke Sanskrit. But they all said the same thing.